Oh, Peggy Gordon, you are my darling. Come sit ye down upon my knee and tell me the very worst reason why I am slighted so by thee.
You know, 8 months ago, when I congratulated Liz Truss on becoming Britain's most hated person, I thought that 6 months was a joke. I thought I would, I was making the point that these prime ministers are not lasting long. And so I thought, well, I'll give her at least 6 months. She didn't even last one. I thought she would at least last 6 months, but no. So now we got this smarmy creature from the Black Lagoon to replace her. Great.
It's time for the RAB Roundup.
This is the show where every week, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, or 5 weeks, or 6 weeks, or 7 weeks, or 8 weeks, or 9 weeks, or at least every 10 weeks, I come on here and talk about whatever I want. Let's start with some old news. Cosmic Skeptic announced that he is no longer vegan. Hi everyone. Recently I have noticed people wondering why I've been so inactive and wondering why I have not uploaded any veganism related content. For quite some time I have been reevaluating my ethical position on eating animals, which is something people have also noticed. But what you will not know is that I have also been struggling privately to maintain a healthy plant-based diet. I wanted to let you know that because of this, I have for some time been consuming animal products again, primarily but not exclusively seafood, and experimenting with how best to integrate them into my life. I am interested in philosophy and never enjoy sharing personal information about myself, but I can obviously see why this particular update is both necessary and relevant. It is not my intention to go into too much detail here, as I think that will require more space and perhaps a video, but rather to let you know with more details to follow later. My opposition to factory farming remains unchanged, as do my views regarding the need to view non-human animals as morally worthy beings whose interests ethically matter. However, I am no longer convinced of the appropriateness of an individual-focused boycott in response to these problems, and I am increasingly doubtful about the practicability of maintaining a healthy plant-based diet in the long term, again for reasons I hope to go into more detail at a later date. At the very least, even if I am way off base and totally mistaken in my assessments, I do not wish to see people consuming a diet on my account if I have been unable to keep up that diet myself, even if I am making a mistake. In other words, I want it to be known that I have made it. I imagine that the responses to this will vary, and I understand why this might come as a huge disappointment to some of my followers. I am truly sorry for having so rigorously and at times perhaps too unforgivingly advocated for a behavior change that I myself have not been able to maintain. I've changed my mind and behaviors publicly on a great many of things before, but this feels the most difficult to address by a large margin. I did not wish to speak about it until I was sure that I couldn't make it practically work. Some of you will not care. Some may understand, some will be angry, and others upset. Naturally, this is a quite embarrassing and humbling moment, so I also understand and accept that there will be some I told you so's. Whatever the case, please know that this experience has inspired a deep self-reflection, and that I will be duly careful in the future regarding the forthrightness of my convictions. I am especially sorry to those who are now vegan activists on account of my content, and I hope that they know I will still effort with you to bring about the end of factory farming. To them and to everyone else, I appreciate your viewership and engagement always, as well as your feedback and criticisms. Well, if he appreciates feedback and criticisms, I have a few of those for him. But first, let's hear what Vegan Gains has to say.
Like, dude, you're talking about eating healthy. You're not convinced you can get enough nutrients on a plant-based diet? Where am I getting my nutrition? My shoulders are bigger than your head. What does he mean he's sorry for creating vegan activists who are standing up for the animals that you're abusing? What do you mean you're sorry about that? You're sorry for convincing people to be ethically minded individuals? And hope that they will know I will still effort with you to bring about the end of factory farming. What's this bullshit about factory farming? Like, it's murder. All of it's murder. I mean, are you only against factory holocausts? If it's a free-range holocaust, you're fine with it. To them and to everyone else, I appreciate your viewership and engagement as always. Yeah, go yourself. I never watch your content because I knew you're sham.
I love Vegan Gains.
It's a great opportunity to meet me, and don't be shy. I say hi and talk to everyone.
Hey, Vegan Gains, Vegan Gains.
Told you to fuck off!
Now, Cosmic Skeptic has his reasons. He went over them in a video that he made after this. What I like about it is that he didn't call the video "Why I'm No Longer Vegan," and that was a very deliberate move on his part, because he actually doesn't want to be one of those guys who makes a big statement saying "Why I'm no longer vegan," adding fuel to the anti-vegan fire, because he actually still is an ideological vegan. He's just found that for himself he couldn't make it work. Now, he has a disease called irritable bowel syndrome, which I have never had, so I don't really know the ins and outs of that disease. I do have a disease, however. I have a disease, some sort of a fungal infection in my gut that's... If I eat any dense sources of carbohydrates or gluten, if I eat any sugar or starch, it will cause severe problems for me. So I've had to avoid that stuff. And you know what? I can still do it. I can still be vegan. For the last couple of months, I've been able to be vegan and still avoid, like, most of what vegans eat. So I don't know if I buy the idea that a Cosmic Skeptic can't make veganism work. However, he seems pretty convinced of it. One thing I like about his post is that he said he was mostly adding in seafood into his diet, which makes me think that he's prioritizing the bivalves, the oysters, and the mussels, which don't have brains, which is a good thing. And also seafood. They're all carnivores in the sea, so it's like, can you really feel that bad for them? There's also the fact that seafood is not farmed, at least not in the way that regular animals are farmed. They are caught in the wild, basically. So, yeah, honestly, like that is the way to go. Seafood is the way to go. A lot of people think like eggs or something is the way to go. That's fucking bullshit. Even though seafood has like chemicals and metals in it that'll give you cancer, who cares? So I don't think any vegan would agree with Cosmic Skeptic's decision to stop being a dietary vegan, even if he's still ideologically vegan. However, that's not something that we can really do anything about, because he tried as hard as he could, and what are you gonna do? He couldn't make it work. But that's not the main point of interest I have in this. My main point of interest is right here, where he says, however, I am no longer convinced of the appropriateness of an individual-focused boycott in responding to these problems. That is very interesting, because I don't believe in boycotts either, and I'm still a vegan. And I'm not a vegan for health, I'm not a vegan for the environment, I'm a vegan for the ethics of it. So why am I still vegan? The thing is, I don't consider veganism to be an individual-focused boycott, as he described it. I know that's kind of how it's understood by a lot of vegans. It is definitely not the way I see veganism. If veganism were just an individual-focused boycott, then yeah, I would get it. There's like, I don't see the point in this because I don't have the optimism to see that kind of action as being ultimately practical for accomplishing change. A lot of people say, well, we can't focus on the individual in veganism. We have to make systemic change. But the problem with that is that you can't make systemic change unless you've changed the whole consciousness around animals. And that's what veganism is. It's not a monetary thing. It's not an economic thing. It's not a purchasing thing. It's not something where you are trying to put pressure on the system with your purchasing. I mean, that might have some kind of effect on it, but that's tertiary to me. The whole point of veganism is to get people to think of animals differently, to get people to realize that you don't have to eat animals. And the only way to do that is to show people. You can't accomplish any kind of systemic change unless there's a real social momentum behind it. So you have to kind of put your money where your mouth is and make a stand and say, this is not okay anymore. And if enough people do that, then other people will take notice of it. And if enough people demonstrate that it's possible and easy and practical, then other people will take a look at it and say, oh, actually, this isn't too bad. Maybe I should get into this. I don't see that as an individual focused boycott. I don't even really see that as a boycott at all. I see that as a social movement. I see that as, let's think of animals differently. Let's think of them as the way we would think of people. And there's no reason not to. There's no reason to think of animals any differently ethically than human beings, which are animals. Humans are animals. The only difference is that we can communicate with each other through language. There is an intelligence difference, but we don't consider babies to be on, morally on the same level as chickens. It's people would be like in horror and shock and awe if they found out that someone was cooking and eating babies, but there's no reason for them to think that. There's no reason, like, logically, for them to think that it's wrong to kill babies if they don't think that it's wrong to kill chickens.
And when I see babies in a stroller, especially when they're crying, I just want to put my foot through the fucking thing and step on it until it's nothing but blood and pulp on the fucking pavement!
So those are the top 5 reasons why I'm getting a vasectomy.
Not just babies, like mentally retarded people. Is it okay to eat them? It doesn't make any sense. The intelligence argument is idiotic. Intelligence doesn't even factor into ethics at all. Not in my opinion. Awareness, maybe. Like, if you have a creature like an oyster that doesn't have a brain, I mean, it's probably going to have some kind of rudimentary awareness via its nerve ganglia, but like, I can't imagine that an oyster really has as much awareness as like a crab, for instance, which is going to have a certain consciousness and an ability to perceive itself in relation to the world and a will to live. An animal that has a will to live, to me, like, I just don't get how you can justify killing it unless you absolutely have to. But the problem is that people don't see it that way because they've been so conditioned to not see it that way. And so veganism is really about getting people to see animals that way. So if anybody who is like Cosmic Skeptic and has been having doubts about this whole vegan boycott idea is watching this, I hope that this kind of made it a little bit clearer in your mind why you're vegan and why this is a strategy that actually it's the only way. That's the thing. If you want to actually make this change happen, you can't do it any other way than being vegan. It's just you have to put your money where your mouth is. You have to make the statement that it's not okay anymore to treat animals like this. And the only way to do that is with your actions. There's just no other way to get it across to people. Like, there's no scenario where people have just been comfortably eating animals their entire lives. Nobody's vegan. And then suddenly it's like, it's time to make a systemic change. Let's change the laws and make it so that we can't treat animals this way anymore. It's just, that is a ludicrous fantasy. It has to come from the ground. There has to be an abstinence movement from the start in order to create the kind of momentum that you need in order to make systemic change. I think I've talked about this enough. In other great news, Steven Crowder's subreddit has been banned. Yeah! There is nobody on earth who is more loathsome and detestable than Steven Crowder. You know, I don't really hate people. I don't really have grudges. You know, I'm too nihilistic for that. But Steven Crowder is the exception. If Steven Crowder gets hit by an ambulance one day and perishes, I'm going to make a video celebrating it. And I don't even feel that way about other right-wing pundits. I mean, Ben Shapiro. I actually like Ben Shapiro. I'm one of those weird socialists who actually likes Ben Shapiro. I like how nerdy he is. I like how he talks really fast. I like how he gives you the most basic, standard neocon take on every issue, but he does it in a way that's so intelligently phrased, and he delivers it in such rapid-fire format that it's actually very easy and digestible, unlike someone like Glenn Beck, who just waffles on slowly and drones about how scared he is. And then every time there's an economic downturn, he's like, I predicted it! I said it was coming! Ben Shapiro doesn't really do any of the apocalyptic stuff. He doesn't tug on your heartstrings. He's a cold bastard, and he knows it. Facts over feelings. That's his thing. And I like it. I like a conservative who can just admit that he's an evil piece of shit. But Steven Crowder, what makes Steven Crowder so abysmally? What makes Steven Crowder, though, so abysmally horrible is that he's an idiot. He knows nothing. It's funny because I think Steven Crowder might have actually been funny if he had stayed a regular stand-up comedian and just tried to be funny. But on his show, Louder with Crowder, he is so ungodly unfunny, and yet he has all of these sycophants who just laugh at everything he says, which only makes it more obvious how unfunny he is. So yeah, I'm glad that his subreddit got banned. Usually I'm not a fan of banning stuff, but in the case of Steven Crowder, I hope his whole YouTube channel gets banned. I hope that I never have to see his face again. But while we're on the topic of banning things, let's talk about the subject of banning hate. I was on Reddit recently and I saw this post that showed a picture of a sign that was attacked by some conservatives, and the sign said, "Ban hate, not books." And it has a picture of this non-binary little twink holding up a book with sparkles around him. Now, I found that interesting because I think there's a sentiment there that's being expressed that I think gets to something a lot deeper that I have a problem with. I responded to it. I said, ban hate? How about hating hate? Should we ban that too, or is that the exception? How about instead of banning things, we learn to accept each other as we are? Focusing on the same energy in the opposite direction is misguided. Now okay, for context, the subreddit that this is in is r/deepfatfried, which is the subreddit of the amazing atheist, basically, and everything that he does, his audience, the people who watch his podcast. And the people who hang out in this subreddit are extremely left-wing. This is like an extreme left community. But there's also, it's not such an echo chamber that it becomes something like r/breadtube or whatever. There's still a little bit of nuance in there because of the amazing atheist himself, who is a bit of an edgelord, so he doesn't quite attract the same kind of sensitive crybabies that are on other left-wing subreddits. But people here are still generally very populist. They fetishize direct action, not even for bad reasons. I'm just saying that's how they are. And so I knew when putting this message of not being angry against people you hate into the suburb. I knew that this was going to get downvoted and this is going to get a lot of disagreement, which is what I wanted. I wanted to have a talk about this. And so right now it looks like it's sitting at negative 18 points on Reddit. So not popular. Somebody named Amazing Spooderman said, I guess you haven't heard of the paradox of tolerance. Now, what he's referring to is a thing created or coined by Karl Popper, some mid-20th century philosopher. I definitely heard of it. I said in response, are you kidding? That's the very thing I'm writing about. Of course I've heard of it. That doesn't mean I agree with the general opinion about it. It is, after all, an opinion, and I don't have to agree with it if it doesn't make sense to me, which it doesn't. So Karl Popper, I believe his conclusion was that hating hate, or not hating hate, intolerance of intolerance is what it was. Karl Popper is basically like, intolerance of intolerance is the only form of intolerance that we can tolerate. That's his conclusion to the intolerance paradox. And he had his reasons, whatever. He can believe what he wants, but I don't really agree with it. And so that's what this thread is going to be about. So somebody replied, some topics just don't work with the whole let's get along approach. To which I responded, I don't agree that there are any topics that won't work with the let's just all get along approach. There are some people who won't work with it, but topics, none. So then there's this person named Bemused Duck who said something to me, and I replied, in general, the policy I advocate for is nonviolence and the free market of ideas. This is a policy that I believe will have the best results in the long run if we invest in it and promote it, but it won't always be the perfect solution to every specific case. Then we get a reply from Bemused Duck. The problem with everything you just said is that fascists do not operate in good faith. When they're weak, they appeal to your compassion for their own sake, and when they are strong, they kill. This is why they cannot be tolerated. If you allow this shit to grow, it acts as a cancer on any society it appears in. They don't have any interest in compromise. They don't want to live and let live. We as a society already learned this lesson. Appeasing them does not work. You know that. To which I replied, you talk of appeasing them as if they are the enemy and need to be dealt with. I don't see why we should have to appease them if they're just expressing their opinions. Letting them have opinions isn't appeasement. It's a basic human right that should be given to everyone. It's a good way to radicalize them even more by closing off communication from them and making them feel hated and discarded. Then I also said, persecuting hatred and hating hatred is, in my opinion, part of the problem. Just as it is part of the problem to hate and persecute any political opinion. It makes people even more angry. Whatever vague group of people you're talking about are, in essence, just people, and they will change their minds if they can be communicated to. They won't change their minds if you refuse to put your best foot forward. So there's a bunch of other comments in this thread, but most of them are just people missing the point and being stupid, and I didn't want to go through all that. I mainly want to highlight the few good responses and good points that I saw in there and what I had to say about them. It's an interesting topic. Tolerating intolerance or not tolerating. To tolerate or not to tolerate. That is the question. You can see where I stand. I stand for tolerating intolerance. But what's your opinion on this? Tell me in the comments. What do you think about this? Should we tolerate people who hate people, or should we hate them back? Should we just hate them back and create this ever-escalating war of hatred between sides? Let me know what you think. But it reminded me of the movie Gandhi, because I very recently watched Gandhi again. I had seen it in high school, and it was like, all right, this is a movie. But it really hit for me differently this time. I watched it with my mom because she was wanting to see it again. And yeah, so the reason it hit so differently is because as I was watching it, I could see that all the things that Gandhi was saying, particularly in the one scene, the clip that I used in my recent Marilyn Manson video where I was talking about this topic. I was talking about the ethics of punching Nazis, which is, you know, a meme that goes back to, I think, 2016, 2017, when somebody punched Richard Spencer in the face while he was just minding his own business. This idea, yeah. So what I saw in the movie Gandhi was that Gandhi was basically saying everything that I had been saying for the last few years. He was saying it too, and it really made me think more about Gandhi, because before then I'd been like, all right, whatever, Gandhi. He's a controversial political figure. I don't really have an opinion on him. Now I think I'm actually kind of a fan of Gandhi. He seems pretty based to me. And I watched that video, that infographic show video where they're like, this is the dark truth of Gandhi. I'd heard all of these things like the dark side of Gandhi, like Penn and Teller on Bullshit talked about. They kind of went on a rant about Gandhi. I'd heard some things. I watched that video and I was honestly like, really, this is it? This is it? This is all you got for me? Maybe it's because I'm according to some people, a fascist sympathizer. I guess it doesn't really bother me too much. What I think was much more important about Gandhi than his foibles and flaws and problems was how strong his message was. His message of nonviolence. It's not just some like, oh, let's get along and everything will be great. He's not an optimist about any of this. He's not saying that, things are going to be great if we just get along with each other. He's like, no, we got to fight. This is a battle. This is a war that we're in. And we got to fight, and we got to lay down our lives, and we got to die. We got to die for our country. But we're not going to use violence. And what I like about this is that it's not escalating the violence, and it's removing us from the paradigm of having to fight each other in order to get what we want, which serves as an example for everybody. Because, you can see this on a very microscopic level in just day-to-day life. People are always fighting each other to get what they want, not just with physical violence, but with verbal violence, by being mean to each other. And I think if you see enough of that, you realize that all that does, it creates this circle that just goes round and round and round and round and round and round, and nothing ever changes, nothing gets better. And people just keep hating each other. People just keep getting mad at each other. And so what I like about Gandhi is he was one of the few people who was able to have this great influence that he had, but also be able to use it to take us out of that paradigm. Everyone else is like, we got to fight harder. We got to entrench ourselves more. We got to build up our fortifications. And that's one of the things I don't like about the left, is that they're always very violence focused. We got to have a revolution, But I think history shows that hasn't really worked out. Every time they've done a violent overthrow, revolution, it has some good results usually. Like, hey, these peasants who are being oppressed are now they can, they have some land and they're not, they're being well fed at least. So like there's some good results that can come from like a violent left revolution. I'm not saying that they're always bad or that they're always even worse than what came before. I think oftentimes they're better than what came before, but you're still kind of left with the same problem of humanity. You know, you're still left with the same paradigm. You're still in the same kind of paranoia, fear consciousness. And I just wonder if there's a better way. That's maybe a slower way, and a way that's not going to be as appealing to people. It's not going to be as exciting to people. And it's actually going to be less, it's going to be more kind of dreary along the journey. It's not going to be as quick. You know, you're not going to rip the Band-Aid off by being nonviolent. But I do think that that's probably the better approach in the long run, especially if you're living in a country that has some sort of Republican government. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Gandhi. Really, I'm becoming a Gandhi fan. I didn't think I would, but I think I am now. Next, I want to talk about Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, and Bionicle. Because there's this YouTuber called, like, Lego Brick blah blah blah, whatever, I can't remember his name, but he has created these AI videos where he uses AI to simulate Jordan Peterson's voice and Joe Rogan's voice, and then he creates this fake episode of Joe Rogan where they talk to each other about Bionicle lore.
When I brought in those Bionicles, I examined how the Toa were a metaphor for humanity. It began with the Toa's arrival on the island of Mata Nui. They emerged from their Toa canisters in pieces, and they literally had to put themselves together. They had to figure out on their own how to build themselves. You must make yourself whole before you can venture into the unknown and confront the dragon of chaos.
Wow, that's deep. I always thought it was fascinating that they had the ability to construct or deconstruct themselves or combine into a larger being.
The fact that they had to transform into these bigger beings to tackle stronger enemies is very clever. You see, one has to make a sacrifice to transform. In this instance, they had to lose their individuality to become something greater and more powerful.
And I love this because I love Bionicle lore. I love Bionicle. I've always loved it. I can't really... my brain has moved past that now because I can't get into fictional worlds anymore. I got kind of into Bionicle, got kind of into Lord of the Rings. I can't do that anymore. I'm so focused on the real world and learning about that, I just can't even spare the mental space for learning all these facts about people's fictional worlds. But I do respect the art form of world building. And a lot of people don't realize this, but Bionicle was like, it had the most crazy, complicated, convoluted world building ever. It was seriously on Lord of the Rings level complicated, and it's amazing. It is rich and detailed, and not only that, the lore was kind of simple at the beginning, and it gets more complicated toward the end, to the point where they actually retcon a lot of the stuff that they established in the beginning and change it around to make it way more complicated toward the end of it. And this might be like a thing where it's kind of unsatisfying because you're like, well, you told me this and now you're changing it. That's stupid. But to me, I never really interpreted it that way. It was more like the stuff that they said at the beginning, the simple stuff, that was like the legends. And now we're getting the real story. You know what I mean? So it's so complicated that the stuff that you read might not even actually be true. It might just be like simplified early material that was later expanded on by Greg Farsty and other people and made into something just way more complicated and as a result, interesting. And so I like that I'm seeing more people these days really get invested in the Bionicle lore because I think it deserves a fan base. And I'm loving the fact that this guy came up with the idea of using Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson as vessels to explain the Bionicle lore. And it makes Jordan Peterson so much more likable because Jordan Peterson is one of the least likable conservatives, I think. I mean, he is really unlikable. I'm not even going to go into it. But I think he would be a lot more likable if he just spent his time talking about Bionicle all day.
And let's not forget about the video games that came out. I spent hours playing Bionicle the video game on my PlayStation 2.
Yo, dude, I beat that game 100%. What a great game. I consider it to be one of the hidden gems on the console.
Fuck yeah, that game's good!
Next up, let's do an update on MrGirl, because I made a video about MrGirl a while back when his YouTube channel was banned. Now, his second channel, MrGirl Returns, I believe was still up when I made that video. That has since been banned. So MrGirl has been off of YouTube for a long time now. Right now, he's on Facebook. He does live streams on Facebook. And instead of actually making interesting videos like he used to, where he would talk about interesting stuff from his own weird, kind of mentally ill perspective that I loved, I thought he was super interesting and super funny and great, despite how just messed up in the head he kind of was. He's just an off-kilter thinker. But now it seems like all he wants to do is talk about Destiny. And they've got this little drama between them where now Destiny and MrGirl have just been at it forever. I guess MrGirl is trying to get everyone to think that Destiny is some sort of sexual predator, which is just a complete waste of time. I mean, never mind it being wrong. I'm sure it's wrong. I don't trust anything that MrGirl has to say about personal issues, because MrGirl is socially dysfunctional beyond belief. But I mean, come on, dude. You had one of the greatest YouTube channels I've ever seen, and now you're just squandering all of your potential, all of your intellectual acumen by just dumping it all into this stupid Destiny drama. Stop it. But that about does it for this episode of
RAB Roundup.
I recently hit 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel, which means I'm going to be doing a live stream sometime soonish. This is going to be the first live stream I've ever done. I've never live streamed before, so this should be interesting. Celebrate 1,000 subscribers. If you want, you can leave questions for me to answer in the comments of this video, and I'll answer them on stream when I do it soon, so that even if you're not able to catch the stream while it's happening, you can still participate in it, or you can just not do that. I don't care. It's just something that might give me a bit of more stuff to talk about. Yeah, so that's what's gonna happen. My next video, what's that gonna be about? I know everybody for the last year has been wanting me to do Fundamentally Loathsome Part 3 on mechanical animals, and still haven't started work on that. I probably won't for some time. Remember I said I was making that video about Italy? Yeah, I'm starting to start back up on working on that again, about the entire history of Italy, up until World War I. I don't know if that'll be one video or two, or hope it's not 3, but yeah, I've got a lot of ground to cover on that, and God, every time I try to make a research video, it's just, I get overwhelmed, which is why I was thinking of maybe doing just a small research video, just on a very small topic. The one I was thinking of doing is on Sporus, the Roman eunuch, who is kind of interesting. I might do that soon. That might be my next, major video. But I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do next. But I'll keep working on stuff, and the RAB Roundup. I'm gonna try to do this. Like I said, I'm gonna try to do it every week. It might be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks. But at least every 10 weeks, I'm going to give you a RAB Roundup. But I'm going to try to do it every week. It'll give me an opportunity to make more stuff, which I always want.